You are listening to Make Change Happen, the podcast from IIED that offers insights on issues affecting the path towards a fairer, more sustainable world.
Forced evictions are a gross violation of human rights. They are usually accompanied by violence and often leave families with many of their fundamental rights violated. We will now hear a snippet from Verinha, a community leader and organizer from the housing movement of the west and northwest area of São Paulo, Brazil, talking about her direct experiences of forced evictions.
And it's very distressing. I'll never forget that day. The police arrived, riot police, throwing bombs, shooting, pregnant women, people with disabilities. Unfortunately, some families even had to stay with relatives or friends to move with their family. Others returned to other slums or occupations. In most cases, here in São Paulo, when evictions happen, we don't solve the housing problem. We simply increase the housing problem.
My name is Camila Cociña. I am a senior researcher at IIED, and I'm here in São Paulo with Lorena Zarate and with Joseph Kimani. Lorena Zarate is the coordinator of the Global Platform for the Right to the City and the former president of the Habitat International Coalition. And Joseph Kimani is the executive director of Slum International Kenya. We know that forced evictions are not going away, that the criminalization of land occupations and housing occupations and the financialization of land and housing and climate change and war and conflicts are all fueling processes and narratives of dispossession, with increased environmental risk often used as an argument to promote the displacement of slums, of informal settlements, and people who are claiming the right to urban land. Only in Brazil, a recent report from the Zero Evictions campaign estimates that over 2 million people are affected or threatened by evictions, of which almost 1.4 million are Black people and are affecting particularly women. So Lorena and Joseph, we just want to start this conversation hearing from you in one sentence. What do forced evictions represent for housing struggles and for your housing struggles?
Thank you, Camila. Hello, everyone. For our organizations, evictions are a serious violation of human rights that destroy people's lives and livelihoods and actually entire communities. Probably one of the cruelest manifestations of greed and dispossession that we can see everywhere in the world.
Yes, that's quite true. We perceive forced evictions as state-sanctioned violence, which erases the poor from the city while protecting inequality.
The reason why we are here in São Paulo is because we are learning from the struggles here. We are learning from how communities are actually resisting evictions and learning from communities how they are finding housing solutions. So we will listen now to one of the most important voices from Brazil, from the struggles against evictions, for the right to dignity, for the right to participation, for the right to social movements, to be engaged in urban processes. Benedito Bardosa, Gito.
Generally, slums, poor neighbourhoods, are extremely invisible. Then, the first strategy to resist eviction is to try to get out of invisibility, using every communication strategy we can. Alternative media, open letters, is very important to try to become visible, to build the process of resistance to eviction. The second thing is to coordinate a network of support, because the more outside support the occupation has, the better, from universities, professors, artists, people who are recognised in the community or in the city in general. The third important strategy is to articulate a legal support system. So it is very important to have popular lawyers who accompany the community, also to coordinate with the public attorney to provide legal support for this resistance process. The fourth possibility is to pressure the governments to reach out to the municipality, the state government, the federal government. The fifth strategy is to seek support in the legislature, reaching out to a parliamentarian, a city councillor, who can make this conflict resonate in this legislative space. In this relationship, and in this work of defending the occupations, legal action and defence alone are not enough. It is necessary to have broad coordination and broad popular resistance so that we can ensure that the evictions are suspended in some way. And the last and most important strategy is the people in the streets. Grassroots mobilization is very important.
So G2 is a key social and housing leader here in Brazil and a key piece of a nationwide coordination that is called the Zero Evictions campaign. The Zero Evictions campaign has been incredible in promoting achievements by passing a court rule that suspends evictions during the pandemic, but also by producing a whole system of social, institutional, and legal coordination of care systems that support the resistance in settlements to promote the right to adequate housing. So over the last year, we have been working here with the Instituto Polis here in São Paulo and with the União dos Movimentos pela Moradia in a research project to understand the role of evidence, the role of civil society coalitions in promoting policy responses that actually prevent evictions. And in this collaborative process, we have been learning a lot. We have been learning the importance of strengthening unit and coordination among social movement, and why is that critical to achieve impact, how actually coordination, social coordination is a victory in its own term, but also the importance of generating systematic evidence, data that showcase the impacts of forced evictions and the scale of evictions that promote actually more sustainable institutional changes. And in this process also, we recognize that it's not only about institutional and legal changes, it's about having governance structures, professionals, and a cultural change, a change of narratives that actually can stop the criminalization of people who are just looking for this, protect the right to stay in place, the right to home, and the right to the city. So, Joseph, we know that SDI has been a pioneer in promoting community-led data collection, on promoting social organization. We want to understand how does the work of SDI, of mapping and enumerations, contribute to these worldwide anti-eviction struggles?
In movements like Slum Dwellers International and Muungano na Vijiji in Kenya, mapping and enumerations are not technical exercises. They are political acts. Because in our cities, invisibility is what allows evictions to happen. Talked of the city erasing the urban majority. So if a community is not counted, not mapped, not recognized, it can be erased without consequence. So when communities produce their own data, they are saying, we are here, we matter, and we are organized. That shifts power. It forces the state to engage, not with victims, but with citizens. And this is where it connects deeply with struggles here in Brazil, because like movements in Sao Paulo, like we saw, it's about turning knowledge into power and power into negotiation. The data is important, but the real power is the collective organization behind that power. And that's what enumerations do, to organize those voices.
Thank you, Joseph. That's a great reflection. And as you just say, beyond data, there is the need for social mobilization and of solidarity. So, Lorena, you have so much experience on working with collectives around the world in different regions that mobilize solidarity and mobilize experiences to create collective power. In your experience as a former president of the Habitat International Coalition and also in the current work of the Global Platform for the Right to the City, what do you think is the role of civil society coalitions in making that evidence visible and effective, and also in sustaining political transformation in the long term?
Yeah, I would say that it's multidimensional kind of task, right? So, of course, documenting and visualizing what's going on, documenting the details of the living conditions of different people and groups, the material, immaterial conditions, the individual and collective dimensions, and of course, the numbers, the quantitative dimension of the reality, but also the qualitative dimensions of how many people, what kind of families, the racial backgrounds, migrants, so on and so forth, right? But also, on the other hand, identifying the role of the different actors and the responsibility of the different actors, both in the current conditions, but also in terms of the threats, eviction threats, and violence and dispossession when they occur. The public sector is present, is allowing conditions to remain as they are, is supporting, in many cases, private interest in terms of displacing people and so-called new developments. And finally, of course, mobilizing different kinds of support, both inside the communities and the affected communities, but also outside the community. So support from professionals, support from urban planners, support from lawyers, so on, right? And that's really, really important at the local level, and the national level, and of course, at the international level, and bringing these cases in front of different United Nations agencies, for example, and give those communities an international voice, an international space.
That's brilliant, Lorena. And I think precisely in that last point, about the need of coalitions and networks at different scale to promote this systemic change that goes beyond the local, but also through the local and with the local. And in that vein, we are going to hear now from my colleagues Alexandra Abson-Frediani, who is principal researcher at IIED, and that we work together in the Housing Justice program at IIED and are part of the Secretariat of the Hub for Housing Justice. And he will tell us a little bit about these efforts at the global scale and how different coalitions and different networks are working together through the Hub for Housing Justice precisely to promote that change of narrative, that change of policy, that change of culture, and above all, that change of practice in the housing sector.
The efforts of connecting struggles across places is fundamental to advance the fight against evictions. We have seen so many times that by making alliances internationally or acting internationally, one can actually influence decisions that are happening in their local context or national context. The Hub for Housing Justice has been a very important space through which we can and we have been coordinating exchanges, lessons learned across different civil society networks and research organizations. So for us, it is critical that we continue building this solidarity across places, that we identify these key entry points, organizations, and spaces that we can raise the visibility of evictions and the efforts that can be done to stop evictions, and so that we can make sure that people have the right to adequate housing secured, protected, and so that we can advance housing justice.
So to conclude this discussion, we know that these are enormous challenges with multiple layers, and we don't want to simplify its complexity, but we want to conclude with a short input from you. So what brings you hope in the fight against forced evictions? Hopefully we can think about the future, understanding what those challenges are, but also what we can do together in the promotion of more fair, more just, but also more sustainable cities. A few last words from you of hope, of future, and of what is needed from us working together.
Yeah, very important, because I think we don't want to be seen like we're just saying stop evictions. We want to be heard in terms of the solutions we are bringing to the city. We want to talk about how cities should transform also the governance, the whole idea of a model where the state plans for the poor or worse against them. That's what we need to deal with. So we want a co-production with organized communities, with the support from allies like IED and others. And this means securing land, investing in upgrading, and recognizing that informal settlements are not temporary. They are part of the city. We've seen many models, even within different organizations, that have put tested models that are successful. So co-production is working. I think we just need to scale it. We just need to integrate it within our governance system and make it a culture. And importantly, it means building stronger global solidarity as well, because whether it's Kenya or Brazil or Chile, the pattern is the same. But so is the resistance. So the future of our cities will not be decided in our boardrooms, of course, in our research laboratories. It will be shaped by organized communities on the ground.
Yeah, totally in agreement. And I think along those same lines, I will highlight three elements. So one, I think we need changes in terms of policy and programs that respect every person right to a place to live in peace and with dignity, and support the processes that we call the social production of habitat, what Joseph just called the co-production processes, right? People are building the city, mobilizing their own resources, even with little money, but with many other kinds of resources. The other change, of course, at the level of the normative framework and the laws, and the role of justice in terms of not criminalizing these groups and these efforts, and respecting and understanding the right to housing that is different than the right to property. And finally, cultural changes and the public debate in terms of removing a stigma from these settlements, from these communities, from these groups. Of course, they're citizens with full rights. And not just that, they're not just reclaiming the right to be in the city and be part of the city. They are building that city at the material level, the physicality of the cities, the housing, the neighborhoods, but also they are part of the culture and the economy of the city. And therefore, they should be part of the decision-making processes in the city.
Thank you so much, Lorena. Thank you so much, Joseph. This has been a very, very enlightening conversation of a very difficult topic in a very short period of time. We invite everybody to look at some of the resources from the Hub for Housing Justice, from Standards International, from the Global Platform for the Right to the City, from Instituto Polis, but also from IIED, from our housing justice work, to find more resources about how communities are resisting evictions and are providing solutions to live a dignified life. And we invite everybody to grow empathy, to grow solidarity towards people and communities who are suffering systemic violence. And we invite everybody to look to protect something that we all should give for granted, which is just a home and a community. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to send us your thoughts and feedback on the discussion, email us at inforequest@iied.org. That's inforequest@iied.org. You can find out more information about this podcast and our guests and learn more about IIED's research around the issues covered in today's episode at iied.org/podcast, where you can also listen to previous episodes and browse the rest of our website for more information about IIED and our work.